Welcome back, designers. In today's tutorial, we're going to be creating a two-page magazine spread on Adobe InDesign. To start off, we're going to click New File. We're going to select our Print preset, and we're going to select Letter as our document size. We're going to call this document Magazine Spread. We're going to input 2 pages. Our starting page will be 2. And we're going to make sure that we have facing pages selected right over here. If we scroll down, we have the option to play around with our columns, our margins, and several other page components. For the moment, I'm going to leave the margins and the bleed and everything at the default setting, but I do want to make sure that I have a little bit of symmetry in my design overall. So I'm going to select 2 columns to help me to create a very symmetrical design. Then I'm going to click Create. Before I start playing around with the actual design of the magazine spread, I want to make sure that I work on some components from my parent page. So I'm going to open my Pages panel. If yours is not open already, you can go to Window and Pages to enable it. And I'm going to double click on my parent page. I know my parent page is selected because it's blue right over here in the Pages panel. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to work on my page numbers. I can also, if I wanted to apply a specific color to this part of the page, I could do so here. What I'm actually going to do, I think, is I'm going to apply some borders to each of the pages, and I'm also going to be applying my page numbers as well as the folio here. To create some borders, I'm going to be utilizing my rectangle tool. I'm going to drag out basically a frame. I'm going to make sure that I have a stroke of none, and I'm going to apply a little bit of color to it. For the moment, I think I want each of the edges to be in blue, maybe like a softer blue. I can always change my mind and change the color later. And I want to make sure that the same frame is reflected on the right hand side. Instead of creating basically a brand new frame, I can hold down Alt if you're on a PC, Option on a Mac, and create a duplicate that I can place on the other side. And I'm going to be placing these borders basically on the far right and far left margin of my spread. Just going to zoom out so that you guys can see what I'm doing. For you guys to zoom out, you can select the zoom tool at the bottom of your tools bar. And you can hold down Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac so that you can zoom out or zoom in as necessary. Still on my pages, on my parent page, so I am going to zoom in a little bit so that I can create my page numbers. And as I explained in class, page numbers are going to basically repeat over and over again in every single page in your spread. So if I decided that instead of 2 pages, I'm going to make an entire magazine of 200 pages or so, the page numbers would update automatically. To create my page numbers, I'm going to utilize my Type tool. I'm going to drag a little text box on the far left corner, very small. Then I'm going to go to the Type menu at the top, select Insert Special Character, Marker, and Current Page Number. It's going to show an A, but don't worry because that's basically going to update to a specific number when you're on that page. So if I'm on page 2, it's going to show as page 2. Before I show you that, I'm just going to go and change the color because right now, as you can see, I have a dark blue border. So I'm going to change the color to paper, which is how InDesign says white, basically. And I think I'm also going to make the page number just a little bit bigger at 14 points. And change the font to marker felt. Obviously, you guys are going to choose your own fonts, your own colors, your own whatever. I'm going to zoom out here. And once again, I'm just going to go and duplicate that page number to the other side, which makes a lot more sense than doing it all over again. So I'm selecting it. I'm holding down Option or Alt on a PC. Having created my page numbers, I also want to create my folio. My folio is basically going to be the name of the magazine as well as the issue date. So if this issue came out in April of 2025, then that's going to be listed on the right-hand side of the folio. To create my folio, again, I am still 100% on my parent page. I'm going to drag out my text box. I'm going to drag out a text box using the type tool. I'm going to write in the name of the magazine, which in this case is Student Life Magazine. I'm just going to go and flush it to the right, increase the size to 14 points, and because I had utilized marker felt earlier for my page numbers, I want it to be consistent. I like this font because it kind of looks like handwriting, so I think that's kind of cool. And again, I'm just going to make a duplicate. You can make a duplicate by holding down Alt and dragging. You can also select copy and then paste in place. And for my copy, I'm going to flush it to the left by selecting the left alignment, and I'm going to change that to the issue date, which is now going to be March 2025, which is the date of this recording. You guys can change it to whatever you want. Now I could go and make further changes right now to this folio, but for the moment I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm going to add one more item on the top left corner, and this one is going to say feature article. So this folio is going to appear on the top left. I want this one to be a little bit larger than the other pieces of text that I've been putting on my parent page so far, so I'm setting it to 24 points, and I'm leaving the same exact font that I was utilizing earlier. I am, for the most part, done editing my parent page. I can always go back and add further edits later. So for the moment, I'm going to make sure I double click on page 2. And when I click on page 2, I can see the contents that I've done so far utilizing my parent page. I'm just going to zoom out so you guys can see a little bit better how much I've done. If I press down W, I can see it in preview mode, and I can see how much work I've done editing the basic components of the magazine spread so far. To go out of editing, to go back to editing mode, you can press W again. Now to help me figure out the layout of my magazine spread so far, I'm going to be utilizing the spread that I made in class, where I was basically using an existing magazine spread as an example, and I'm going to be copying that example on my own magazine spread. You guys can go and pull out your sketch basically right next to you as you guys are making edits. I am going to be utilizing an image of the sketch and placing it next to me in the pasteboard so you guys can see what I'm referencing. Okay then, so utilizing my sketch here, I can see that I have a really long article right over here. I have several images, a little bit of body text, and it's broken up a little bit more on page 2 here. And then moving on to page 3, it's utilizing a grid of different frames, and it's dividing up with images and body text pretty evenly. So I'm going to try to copy this layout as much as possible utilizing my frame tool. So again, I need to make sure I'm on page 2 here. To start off with, I can see that it goes past this column, but that's okay. I'm going to create a grid utilizing the gridify method I taught you guys in class, where you drag out a frame and you press the up arrow key to create more columns. You press the right arrow key to create more rows. So I am going to drag out a column of 3 frames right over here. I can see that the header and title kind of goes across both pages. So I'm going to drag out a frame for the header. Then on page number 3 here, I'm going to utilize the gridify technique once more to create a column of 4 frames. And I'm just going and aligning them to the page margins. Then I'm going to drag out a second column, and I'm going to try to keep it as symmetrical as possible, but utilizing only 3 frames. Now, obviously, you guys are not going to copy me. I want you guys to go and follow your sketches to the best of your ability. I can always alter the size of these frames later if it doesn't suit me. Okay then, having created the basic layout, I'm ready to start filling some of these frames with both text and images. So I'm going to be basically getting rid of that sketch because I no longer need it, and I'm going to zoom in on page number 2. So on page number 2, you have this big old frame where I'm going to be basically placing my big old header. Now my header is going to be real. It's going to be the arts at HML. You guys are obviously going to be selecting some topic related to student life and your personal experience of student life in high school. You can check your project description on Schoology for further details about how you guys can develop that topic and some different examples that you guys can use. So this is going to be my example. You guys are not going to copy it. Just want to make sure that I am stating that very bluntly and very clearly. Now, following the sketch, there was some body text here. We are not writers, so we're not going to be spending our time writing a bunch of copy. Instead, what I'm going to do is for the areas where it has a lot of body copy, I'm going to use my type tool and I'm going to click inside of that frame, and I'm going to utilize the placeholder text in InDesign to basically fill that up. To do so, I'm going to go to the type menu at the top, and I'm going to select fill with placeholder text. And it's going to fill with a bunch of gibberish, basically. I'm going to highlight that, change the size to about 14 points, select a different font that appeals to me. And now that I selected a font and a size that appeals to me, I actually want to go and save this formatting using paragraph styles so that every time I create body text, I can basically go and copy this format to reuse. To do that, I'm going to select that frame. I'm going to go to the Styles menu by going to Window and Styles, and I'm going to select Paragraph Styles. I'm going to click the little box with the plus sign at the bottom of the Styles menu. This is now called Paragraph Style 1. I'm going to call it maybe Body Text. I'm going to click OK. And now, every time that I create more body text, I can basically just go and recreate that same formatting. So for example, if this frame right over here has body text, and I want to copy this exact same formatting, I can click on it inside the frame with the type tool, go to type, fill with placeholder text, and then I can easily select the frame, click the body text paragraph style, and that formatting is copied for me automatically, which saves a lot of time and energy that I should be spending doing something more fun, don't you think? Now, I like the layout so far, but I kind of feel like this block of text would look a little bit more polished if I broke it down into columns. In order for you guys to break a block of text down into columns, you can select that frame, go to the Object menu at the top of your workspace, select Text Frame Options, and you can go and break it down into more columns if you want to. I'm going to click Preview right here so I can see as it changes, but I can basically up the number of columns. And you guys can see when you break it into columns, it just looks more polished, more organized. Because it's such a small text box, I'm just going to go and break this down into 2 columns, and I'm going to click OK. Next, I'm going to be utilizing my sketch, and I'm going to be figuring out which other areas in my design overall need text before I start going and filling the rest of it with images. Every now and then, you want to make sure you press W to go into preview mode, and you can see how much of the design you have left to go and to edit. So I can see that this is looking very text heavy, so it's time for me to start adding some images before I further adjust the text. But so far, I would say it looks very professional. I'm going to go back into editing mode by pressing W, and now I'm going to start placing images that are going to illustrate the spread. So the entire spread is about the visual arts at HTML, so correspondingly, I'm going to be adding quite a lot of images having to do with art. So if you guys are doing a spread about the mysteries of cafeteria food, then there should be images of cafeteria food somewhere in there, right? So the images that you guys select, whether it's images that you've taken yourself or images that you're sourcing off a copyright-free website, need to relate somehow to the actual spread that you're creating. I'm going to press Ctrl D after selecting a frame so that I can start basically filling my spread with beautiful images. If you want to select multiple frames to fill with images, you can press the frame and hold down Shift to select multiple frames simultaneously before you Command or Ctrl D and start selecting the images that you want to fill the frames with. Now that I've filled most of my spread with images, I'm going to press W so I can go into preview mode, and I can see that my spread is looking really professional so far, although there's definitely some areas for deep improvement here. So one area, having gone into preview mode, I can see that my spread is looking really professional so far, although there's a lot of areas for improvement here. One area for improvement would be the very first page, which as you guys can see is very text heavy, so it looks a little bit clunky. I can also see that right over here I have this text frame that is going right under the image, so I'm going to be doing something called text wrap to fix that momentarily. I'm going to be adding a drop cap to the beginning of the article, and then because this was supposed to be like a side note to the article, so like a little additional piece of information, I'm going to be making that visually different from the rest of the text in the article by adding a little bit of color underneath. So it's looking really professional so far, but now it's time to go and spice it up. I'm also going to be adding slightly more sophisticated borders around the frames and basically polishing up the rest of the article. To do so, I'm going to go back into editing mode by pressing W on my screen. And the first thing that needs correction is this frame right over here, which is overlapping this text. I'm going to select both frames simultaneously by holding down Shift to select them both. Then I'm going to be utilizing the text wrap option by going to Window and Text Wrap. And I'm going to select the middle option, which says Wrap Around Bounding Box. So that now you guys can see that the text, which previously was behind the image, is perfectly positioned right next to the image. To show you again, you can see right here it's kind of going behind the frame, which looks really sloppy. So when I select that second text wrap option, it looks a lot cleaner and a lot more polished and more professional. That looks great. I'm going to also be creating a drop cap at the beginning of this article. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to highlight that I at the beginning of the article. Then I'm going to open up my properties panel, and the drop cap option is a little bit hidden in the properties panel, so Right under character, what you guys would go and change the font, the size, and so forth, you guys see paragraph. I'm going to click those three little dots right under paragraph to enable more options. And over here, I can see the options to go and shift the text a little bit, add a drop cap, and so forth. The drop cap looks a little bit like this. It looks like a little A and it says drop cap number of lines. Right now I'm just going to click 1, 2, 3, and the more numbers that you add, the more dramatic that drop cap becomes. So for the moment, I'm just make it like 2 or 3 to go and make the drop cap really nice and dramatic. If you guys wanted to create an entire word drop cap, so the entire word here would be ibunk. I don't know, it's complete gibberish. You guys could go and utilize this option right here, which goes and makes the entire word a drop cap. But I think that looks a little bit sloppy, so I'm just going to make the first letter in the text a drop cap. I'm going to zoom back out so you guys can see what that looks like so far. And I don't know about you, but I think adding the drop cap definitely makes it look a lot more polished. It makes it look like the article has a clear beginning, clear end, and so forth. So it's already looking a lot smoother after I did the text wrap around these two frames. I added the drop cap. This over here is supposed to be like a side quote or something like that. So I'm going to make it look a little bit more different by adding a fill right underneath it. I think I'm maybe going to select one of the colors utilized in the spread so far. So to do that, I'm going to use my good old friend, the color theme tool, and click somewhere in this image with the color theme tool. And it's going to add several different swatches utilizing colors that are already provided in the image. To add those swatches to my regular swatches panel, I can click right here, this little plus sign. And now the swatches are available for me to use. So when I click on this frame, go to fill, and go to my swatches, I can see all of those swatches from the image that I just sampled are listed here below. So utilizing our school colors, I think I'm going to utilize this orange right over here. And maybe just for kicks, I'm going to highlight the text. I'm going to make the text a little bit smaller just so visually it looks different from the rest of the article. And I'm going to just go and push it a little bit off the edge so it's not going and touching the edges of that box. Just using these options in my paragraph panel. I'm also setting the text to white, so again, visually it looks separate from the rest of the article, which for me personally, I just feel like it looks a lot more professional that way. Now the great thing about doing placeholder text is that it doesn't really matter if you cut off some of the text. It doesn't say anything anyway, it's complete gibberish. So don't worry too much if you guys are cutting off parts of the text because again, we're just focusing on the design. We're not really interested in what it says, at least right now. So zooming out so I can see my work so far, I'm going to press W to go into preview mode, and I think you would agree with me. That's looking really polished and really professional. I'm almost done. I just have a few final edits to make, and I'm going to be doing so utilizing these frames, these image frames. Maybe I'm going to be adding a little drop shadow or maybe a stroke around them to make each of the frames a little bit more visually impactful. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of color to the header, and I think I'm also going to be making this frame right over here in my first page a little bit larger. Don't forget to Control S every 5 minutes or so in case anything happens, you don't lose all of the work that you've done. So I want to make this image frame just a little bit larger. In order to do so, I'm just going to go in and drag it down a little bit. And I'm going to drag down this text box again. If I cut off any part of the text, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't say anything anyway. And I'm going to reposition the image. And if you guys double click on the image, you'll see that the frame starts turning red which allows you to go and crop out parts of the image. So there was a student standing off to the side pretty much on his own, so I'm going to crop him out and make it seem like he was never there. So that is just my wonderful 5th period at the gallery show, as you guys can see. So I can go and just go drag out and reposition the image as necessary. So I feel like that looks a little bit more polished. I'm ready now to go and add some frames uniformly. I'm going to be doing so utilizing what's called object styles to go and save my formatting so it's easy for me to apply to each of these images. First thing I'm going to do is select the frame. I'm going to go into properties, and I think I'm going to go and add a little stroke around them. I'm going to go and open the same exact color swatches that I had made earlier and applying this wine red stroke around it. Maybe set it to about 2 points to make it a little bit more impactful. If I hit W, I'll be able to see what it looks like without all of the guides around it, which looks good. Maybe I'll set it to 1 point to make it a little bit less noticeable but still impactful. And again, if you guys press W, you can go back and forth and see whether you like it. So I think I like it. In addition to that, I think I'm going to play around with some of the corner options. So if I click right over here under stroke, it says corner, and I have it set to none, which is basically like your boring old rectangular frame. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just more options if you guys want to play with it. So I think I might want to go and play with some inset options, which is going to make it look kind of like a vintage photo, with some of the cropping of a vintage photo, which for me, I think I like that. It looks definitely a lot more visually appealing to me. So what I want to do is I want to create an object style that I can basically save this formatting to. And if I was going to add any effects, which I don't believe I'm going to do so right now, but if I was going to add any effects like a drop shadow or something along those lines, I could basically save all those edits very easily. To save the object style, I'm going to select the frame, go to Window, Styles, and Object Styles. And I can see that right now it's set to none, so I'm going to click the little plus sign at the bottom of the Object Styles panel. It's called Object Style 1, which I'm going to double click to change to Image Frame Style. And now, every time that I click on any one of these frames, I'm going to just go and highlight all 4 of these simultaneously. When I click Image Frame Style, you can see that that same formatting is copied uniformly across all of these image frames, which makes editing a lot faster and a lot smoother. So applying it to the leftover frames, it makes editing very, very much faster. And it looks a lot more polished, as you guys can see. Doesn't mean that all of the images need to be uniform, so maybe I don't want to apply those fancy corners to these 2 images. That's okay. You can always change it later on if it's not to your liking. So just collapsing my panels here so I can see what my work looks like so far. I think you can agree it looks a lot more polished. So right now it's just about doing final edits. So I want to add a little bit of color to the text so it's not all black. I was thinking about maybe highlighting my drop cap and applying a fun color to that. So I'm going to click where it says fill, and I think I want to go and utilize that same orange that is used to the left hand side of it. You can see that when you go and utilize the same colors used throughout the spread, it looks a lot cleaner and a lot more polished. I was also experimenting with maybe making HTML or visual arts a different color. So you guys can go and play around with different color options for your headers as well. So that is looking really great so far. One thing that I've noticed that I forgot is to add subheadings. So in a typical magazine spread, you have subheadings that break down the different contents of the article. So I'm going to be adding some fictional subheadings, I think right about over here and here. So going back into editing mode, I'm going to add a fictional subheading. So something like students at work. And one thing about the subheadings is you want them to be different enough from the rest of the text that visually the reader can see that they are separating different parts of the article. So when you guys are creating subheadings, one thing you might want to consider doing is utilizing what's called the character style so that you can apply them uniformly to all of the subheadings throughout. So let's say I want each of the subheadings to be in orange. I also want them to be a little bit larger in size, about 18 points. And maybe I even want them shaded. So I think instead of shaded, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to shade them in orange and make the text in white. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's not going to work out, but that's okay because I'm just going to go and select a different option so that it looks a lot more professional. I'm also going to utilize the same font that I was using throughout to keep it really consistent. And that looks really good for the subheading. So what I want to do is I actually want to go and highlight that. And then I'm going to go to Window, Styles, and now Character Style. I'm going to click the plus sign and I'm going to call this my subheading style. So that when I go and add another subheading, like let's say right over here, I add another fictional subheading and this is going to be called Gallery Shows. I don't have to go and do all of that formatting again. I can just click the subheading style and it's saved for me automatically. I guess it didn't save the shading, but that's okay because I can just go and easily add that utilizing the shading option in my properties panel. But definitely utilize your styles because it's going to make it so much faster for you guys to finish editing all of the spread simultaneously. Alright, you guys, I have to say I'm really happy with how my spread looks so far, so I think I'm ready to export my final draft. In order for you guys to export your final draft, once you're ready, you guys are going to go to File, Export. You guys are going to call it Magazine Spread. Your format is going to be Adobe PDF Print. We're going to click Save. And I want to make sure that when I'm exporting, I select the option that says Spreads. This is really important because I want to be able to see both pages side by side. And then I'm going to click Export. It's telling me that some of the text is overset on pages 2 and 3. That means some of the text was cut off. But again, it's not really that big of a problem because it's all gibberish. It's just placeholder text. If you guys were exporting a file utilizing real copy, like a writer had supplied you the real copy for an article, then that's something that you would definitely want to correct before exporting. But for right now, it's not really that big of an issue, so I'm going to click OK. And this is what my spread looks like when I open it up as a PDF file. I think it looks really professional, and I know that you guys are going to be showing me some impressive work as well. Can't wait to see all of your final designs. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, and until next time, peace out.